And I looked at the vehicle being rolled out onto the stage, and my initial reaction was, this is a gag. They're just messing with us. The real vehicle is behind the curtain. It's going to come out here shortly.
Hey guys, I'm Juliana, your automotive woman. Welcome back to another episode of Cars Without Sausage. This week I chat with Pete Gruber, CEO of Gruber Motor Company, owner of the world's first and largest independent Tesla service center. Pete and his team have created the industry's first EV battery bunker, and we get into why he created it and how it will help to improve EV battery service safety. Then we switch gears and discuss the release of the Tesla Cybertruck and whether or not it's a good vehicle or essentially a Hollywood celebrity gag vehicle. And then finally, we finish off our chat by learning whether or not the newest Tesla Roadster sports car will actually be released in 2026. I hope you enjoy this podcast, and thank you for watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You and I, we met just a little over a year and a half ago. I came down to your Tesla service center in Phoenix, Arizona to test drive and review your very rare Tesla Roadster VIN number 5. And I have to tell you, since meeting you and test driving your vehicle and learning all about your facility, I wouldn't call it obsessed, but maybe borderline. So I've been watching your YouTube channel, following it, all of your Instagram. And all that said, most recently I noticed you started posting on your IG about an EV battery bunker. And I think EV battery bunker, and I'm thinking like tornado, hurricane, bomb, right? I'm not thinking EV battery bunker. And I like to think that I'm pretty in tune with the automotive and motorsport industry, but I've never heard of an EV battery bunker. So my question is what is a battery bunker and why did you create it in the first place?
So what's the reason for it? Yes, good question. In an electric vehicle, there are battery safety management functions that are software controlled, and also a lot of hardware goes along with it. And of course, the fundamental reason is these batteries are highly volatile, they're flammable, they are dangerous. So they go to great lengths to monitor the health of the batteries, the charge levels, and all that. When we do service work on the batteries, we have to take them out of that safe environment. Oftentimes we have to take them apart. Like in a Tesla Roadster, they have 11 sheets, and each of those sheets have 621 cells on them. And usually the type of work we do is sheet related or even down to brick related. There are bricks in each sheet. And when we're doing that, it is no longer within that battery safety management structure or system. So the first fire that we had in Arizona was in 2017. And we were just getting started. We didn't know how to really work on these batteries. No one really did, except for maybe Tesla. And we ended up having a fire in 2017. A lot of safety protocols came out of that. And unfortunately, we had another fire in 2021. That one was related to an electrical problem in the building. But still, we decided, you know what? We have very strict protocols, but let's go a step further. Whenever we take these batteries out of their safe environment, let's isolate them from the main building. Let's put them into a separate battery bunker, basically, which is a 40-foot steel shipping container. And that way, if there is any kind of a anomaly, mishap, it is contained, completely contained, and it doesn't affect the rest of the cars, which was the biggest problem we had in the second fire. The first fire, we had 7 of our own Roadsters that died and no customer cars. In the second fire, we had 21 customer Roadster cars that died in that fire. So that was a fundamental reason. And we also had realized fairly early on that in order for EV shops to have all of the safety features in place, they're really going to need to isolate the battery work from the low-tech auto work. And that was the reason we created that battery bunker.
Okay, so to clarify, the battery bunker isn't actually underground, it's above?
Right, it is above ground. It's in a 40-foot steel sea container. And
Okay.
we lined it with drywall. We have fire monitoring systems installed, and power supplies. There's an air conditioner in there, and it is a completely separate, self-contained electronics lab specifically designed for the batteries to keep them on either life support or to do service work on the batteries once they come out of the car.
Okay, so when you started posting about it on your IG, um, I immediately Googled it. Like I said, I'd like to think I'm very in tune with automotive and motorsport. And the only thing that popped up was essentially the videos you were creating. So is this the first of its kind?
That we know of, yes.
Okay.
There's a lot of legend surrounding the early days at Tesla, and one of the things that we heard was that the first generation Tesla Roadster batteries, which is about 1,000-pound battery, they had one version that was suspended over a large vat of water. Picture a small swimming pool, basically. And if there was any kind of a problem, it ignited or whatever, they could simply drop it into this tank, and it won't extinguish immediately because lithium ion fires are very difficult to put out. It actually makes its own oxygen. It's kind of like lighting up a chunk of magnesium. You can throw that underwater and it will continue to burn.
Do you think what you've created here now is this something you're obviously sharing openly?
Mhm.
But is this something that you're hoping not just Tesla service centers or Tesla dealerships, but do you hope that other OEMs start taking your idea for that safety factor?
Oh, very much so. To put this in perspective, the Tesla service centers are not allowed to crack open battery packs. That's one of the frustrations that customers have, because if you take a Tesla vehicle, any type actually, and you have a battery problem, the only solution they offer, other than a fuse replacement, by the way, is a full replacement. So, and that's probably because of the safety issues and lack of skills doing component level troubleshooting. But any independent shop that is planning on working on the batteries really should separate that function from their main building and create something akin to what we have, which is an isolated battery bunker where all of this type of work takes place.
Do you only work on EV batteries that are out of warranty? Or are you working on all the, say, for instance, Tesla batteries that are still in warranty? So how does that work if they can't do the work themselves?
Well, a customer that has a vehicle, EV of any type for that matter, that is under warranty,
Mhm.
will not take that car to an independent shop like ours because we have no ability to recover warranty costs. And we're
Mhm.
not the source of warranty. So it's not free, in other words. At the Tesla service centers, they're going to get free service while they have that 8-year drivetrain warranty. The vehicles that we see are vehicles out of warranty or in warranty if they want a modification done to the car. They want the automatic front opening feature installed. That would be something we would do, or suspension upgrades. None of which the service center, or at least the OEM service centers, are going to do.
Would you consider yourself, and maybe you're too humble to say yes, um, would you consider yourself an authoritarian within this segment of EV safety because of, some of the fires you've been through?
Humility is not one of my strong points. So yeah, I don't have a problem there. But yes, we are definitely in fact, all of our companies. Let me back up a moment. We have 5 operating divisions here, and we pride ourselves in propelling ourselves into a position of leadership in any of those divisions. So yes, in the EV independent space, we are definitely seen as one of the early pioneers in a position of leadership, and we also often freely share our intellectual property. Things like some of the videos that you've seen. We will show them how we built the battery bunker, how we built the power supplies, why we isolate the batteries. And, on a weekly basis, we have independent EV shops all over the world that are asking for our inputs, advice. We stop short of franchising or allowing them to fly here and get trained. We just don't have the bandwidth or the ability to handle those diversions.
So that said, would you build battery bunkers for others, or again, it's just you don't have enough techs or enough manpower for that?
Yeah, Juliana, there's so many things that I would love to do, For example, ICE car conversions, the old muscle cars. It would be a boatload of fun to convert those to EVs. And then, of course, robotics. The problem is we are so busy with Tesla Roadsters these days. We barely have time to look at the other Tesla vehicles, and we have an unbearably long lead time. It's up there to like 6 or 9 months for a Model S or X coming into our shop. And we're fundamentally telling them, we can't take your business. Although some are patiently waiting and do eventually get serviced. But yes, we are certainly in a position to design and build these types of battery bunker safety systems, but just don't have the time or the ability.
In relation to insurance, right, with this new protocol and this new bunker, do you think that's obviously going to improve insurance for EV shops or service centers?
Oh, very much so. We're probably the most visible because of two fires. There are a lot of independent shops that have not yet been recognized by the insurance companies they have for the elevated risk that they have. And typically, here's a warning: if you have any kind of a mishap, any kind of a claim, that insurance company is immediately going to review their risk portfolio regarding your insurance and make adjustments. And they're not going to be, simple adjustments. They're going to be very costly. So at this point, the insurance companies still haven't caught on to the fact that there's an elevated risk for any company working on electric vehicles, especially the ones that are willing to go beyond low-tech auto, tires, brakes, suspension, and dive into the electronics portion of these electric vehicles.
Okay, so first of all, I appreciate how you've always been open about your fires, right? Mm-hmm. And very much so what you've learned from them. And that said, what can first consumers owning EVs who might be new to their electric vehicle, or even a dealership per se, what kind of tips would you give them for safety, whether it's a home or a dealership, from everything that you've learned? What are some best practices?
Well, GM and Ford, who had EV recalls, and some of the problems were related to the cars potentially catching fire, would actually advise customers, don't park it in your 2-car garage. Leave it outside overnight until we can get to it and handle that recall. Generally, though, these EVs that have gone past that point are very reliable. There is very little danger, if any at all, that battery will catch fire because of the enormous amount of research and learning that has taken place on how to build electric vehicles safely and how to manage that battery system. So really, I don't have much advice because if you look at the statistics, ICE fires are far more prevalent than EVs, even in people's homes.
It's funny that you say OEMs suggest that you park outside, at least sometimes, while they fix these protocols and recalls and such. But when I was reviewing a Ford Mustang Mach-E in the winter, I had probably, I want to say 32% less battery than I was supposed to have. And I was so concerned that I actually went back to Ford and I was like, am I doing something wrong? And they said, try to move your vehicle inside. So they were telling me to move it inside. So that said, can you talk about preconditioning of electric vehicles and how to do that the right way? It's not just about parking your vehicle inside or leaving your vehicle plugged into your level 1 or level 2 charger at home, or maybe it is. You tell me.
Well, the advice that you got from Ford to leave the vehicle inside was related to the amount of thermal management that takes place if the vehicle is left outside in a harsh environment, especially at night when it gets substantially colder. And the strategy there being, of course, that it's not going to need as much battery heating or thermal management being inside your garage. The preconditioning has more to do with the setting up the battery so that it can charge fully, because it's when it's extremely cold, lithium-ion batteries are somewhat compromised. They're actually marginalized by the cold. So there's a recommendation typically to precondition the battery before you go to a supercharger, because then you'll get an optimum charge.
Okay. What I can take away from all of this in relation to EV battery bunkers essentially is it's done for safety. It will less chance of having a fire. My last question before I pick your brain about the Tesla Cybertruck and BYD and the newest Tesla Roadster. Your battery bunker, how far away do you have to keep it away from your building?
Ours is from the block wall for the main 18,000 square foot service center is probably about 50 feet, 60 feet or so, which is more than adequate, because when you do have a fire inside a steel, shipping container, it's pretty much contained. And worst case scenario is if combustion continues inside the sea container, it will eventually heat up the metal. It may glow red, but the fire company or the fire department comes out and they simply cool it down, spray water on it. We actually had a fire here in Phoenix about 2 years ago or so, one of the utilities, where they were storing lithium-ion batteries inside a steel container. And it ended up completely containing that fire. So yeah, about 50 to 60 feet is what we have. You could even be closer than that, because the flames aren't going to be able to escape that sea container.
Okay, and if something goes wrong with a Tesla battery, and it's still in warranty, so can Tesla fix their own battery, or?
Yeah, they
Okay.
do, but they don't do it at the service center level. What happens typically when a customer takes let's say a Model S, ailing Model S that has a battery problem, internal to the battery, of course, the only solution is going to be a full replacement. And the two options Tesla gives them, if they have them, would be a remanufactured pack, about $14,000 or so, or a brand new pack, which is about $22,000. Where these remanufactured packs come from, yeah, that's a massive amount, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I mean, in a standard ICE vehicle, you kind of spread your costs around. In that EV, you've got one massively expensive, item. So where they get those from is from the Lathrop remanufacturing plant. They ship their batteries back there, and they do some refurbishing and rebuilding, and then have remanufactured, large battery packs available. But yeah, getting back to the cost, there's definitely a lot of discussion about the unanticipated cost of a bad battery in an EV, like a Tesla Model S. Oftentimes, these cars that are now out of warranty, and that's the reason that it's so perturbing to the customer, is an older car, 2013, 2014, 2012 even, and they are out of warranty, and the valuation on those cars is maybe $25,000, $30,000. Well, who's going to put a $22,000 battery pack into a $25,000 car? That's the big problem. So there is now a cottage industry of shops like ours that are beginning to emerge, and they're growing rapidly. There's a Facebook site for those of you interested. It's run by Ray Johnson, and I always get the name wrong. It's a Tesla BMS 029 underscore. There's some underscores in there, but look up BMS underscore 029 or 18, and they've got about 2,000 members now, And this is where the people that have bad battery packs, the Tesla owners, tend to converge and then lament the fact that they've got this massive problem. But on the flip side, there are a number of these independent shops now that realize that if they're visible on that site, they're going to get some business.
Yeah, but again, I have to reiterate the fact that I love your openness on all of your social platforms and on your own website that you put your pricing right there. So
Yeah.
you guys are not even a quarter of that price. So is it better to lease or to finance?
Lease or finance, yeah. I'm not a financial type. I have people here that do that, but well,
You're
first of
so
all,
humble, Pete. You're so humble.
well, let's put this in perspective. Bad batteries in the Teslas are really an aberration. They're not the norm. So that's the first thing we have to point out. Of course, though, like EV fires, that's what makes the news. A failed EV battery in a Tesla out of warranty is what makes the news. That's what everyone talks about. So that's the first thing to consider. If I had to advise somebody on what the best purchase would be, first of all, the early Teslas up to 2016, I think, had free supercharging. Now, if you put some numbers to that, there's a huge savings there per year because you're getting free fuel. You do that in an ICE vehicle. That's also a substantial savings, but it's not available. None of the OEMs that were making ICE vehicles would ever tell you, okay, you buy our vehicle, we'll give you free fuel for the life of that car.
Do you guys have different charging rates depending on the time of day?
Yes, very much so. The utilities here, they have what's called peak demand times. And of course, those are when you get home in the afternoon, 5 o'clock, you're making supper, taking showers, whatever it is. So what the Tesla owners typically do is they can dial in a scheduled charge on their car through the screen. And the ideal times would be like midnight to morning. There's also a much reduced cost when you're charging at home versus out on the road with the pay-per-view type charging. If you're charging at home, it is substantially less expensive than buying gasoline at the local QT.
Yeah, and I will say, as much as I think Elon is unfiltered, a little bit nuts there. Let's just call it as it is. I think what he's done with his charging network is amazing. So all that aside, now I want to switch gears. I want to talk about the Cybertruck. I want to get your opinion on BYD and the newest Tesla Roadster that hopefully is going to come in 2026. So first, the Cybertruck. Have you driven it yet? I know you guys hosted a podcast about it, but have you actually driven it?
Yes.
Okay. What are your thoughts?
When Dr. Jay Larson brought out his Laguna Blue Cybertruck, he had it wrapped. He was very gracious and kind to bring it to our service center, and it really enjoyed its stay with all the Tesla Roadsters. Those are basically its grandfathers, if you think about it, right? Much smaller, but still. And we had it outside, and it was we also had Doc Larson on our podcast. Some of the takeaways for me were, this car's a celebrity. He can't go anywhere without attracting crowds. While he's on the road, it's an unsafe situation because people are clicking pictures all the time with their cell phones. He went to a burger place, In-N-Out Burger here locally, and not only did people stop and gather around his truck, but he flushed the restaurant out as people came out to see a Cybertruck, potentially for the first time, because he was one of the early adopters who got his first. He then asked me, do you want to drive it? And I said, absolutely. So the first thing he does is he says, okay, now normally it sits pretty high. It was like 6 inches above the tire. And he said, to get in it, it's much easier. So I lower it. And he had a key fob. And sure enough, the thing comes down and you can get into it easily. My first takeaway once I got in the cabin was, this is minimalistic. There are no stalks, there are no knobs, there are no dials. All I saw was a clean dash with a screen. So then it's time to drive it. I said, well, where's the, the drive button or the shift lever or something? Oh, it's on the screen. There's a slider bar. So you've got R, you've got D, and you've got N, in the middle for neutral. So that was the other thing. Then I'm starting to drive it, and I've got my own personal racetrack here. I probably took you on it, Deer Valley Road. There's a
Yes.
median, there's no side access. You can see a mile down the road, and it's pretty safe if you're going to do something crazy like do a ludicrous launch. So I'm driving this thing, and what was fascinating was it felt like a construction vehicle. What I mean is like a track hoe, a bulldozer. It was massive. It was heavy. I'm used to driving Tesla Roadsters, which are nimble and light and, bump steer and all that. This thing just hugged the road, and it sat there, and it was like an extremely heavy type item going down the road until I blipped the wheel a little bit. And I realized this thing is very nimble. Then blip the accelerator. Again, responsiveness like a supercar. So then it came time, we got to the end of the road, and I had to make a U-turn. And I'm used to making that very U-turn because I'm test driving Roadsters all the time. And I usually have to swing to the right a bit to take my left turn to be able to make that U-turn so I don't hit the curb on the other side. Well, with the Cybertruck, I started to go right a little bit, and then I turned the wheel, and I couldn't go any further. It was a quarter turn. It had the yoke wheel, and this thing actually steers rear tires and front tires. So my U-turn was done in less of a radius than even a Tesla Roadster.
Yeah.
So then again, we're on the road, and it was amazing because even as big and heavy as it feels, it's extraordinarily responsive, and it literally drove like a Maybach Mercedes or a Cadillac. It was smooth as glass, even smoother than the Roadster for that matter.
For me, I find it to be a gimmick almost, because you talk about all those pictures and all those distractions, and I saw the gentleman on your podcast, and he even referenced that cops pull up beside him and they're taking pictures, right? Do you feel as though all the screens though also in the vehicle is also a distraction? Because I recall him saying that the visibility in that vehicle is just terrible. So how can you be focused on the road when you're so distracted on playing with these buttons?
Well, good point. You have to get used to the vehicle. And one of the first takeaways for me again was with the tonneau cover closed, that rear view mirror is completely worthless. It's just dark. So I said, I can't see out the back. He said, well, it's on the screen. Well, now I have to look down, and sure enough, you can see everything in the back because there's a camera. Mm-hmm. Well, it took me about a year before I trusted my screen in my Model S to make any kind of back turns or anything, or to just simply back out of a parking spot, because I'm old school. And after a year or so, I now trust that screen more than I do my side view mirrors, because oftentimes they're crooked or not, set up correctly. Yeah. I think it's going to be a generational thing. I think it's going to be something that we're going to have to get used to. But the thing about visibility in the Cybertruck, I didn't at any point feel like there was that I couldn't see well toward the front of the vehicle. Even the pillars seemed to be average. And the amount of glass in that car, I mean, my God, it looked like a 4-foot windshield wiper, for that gigantic windshield. And it didn't stop there because the glass continued to the roof of the car.
Yeah, I'm not convinced on the vehicle. I also think from a safety standpoint with all that glass as well, it's I wouldn't want to see that vehicle in an accident, although I've seen some people crashing. I think it was in Beverly Hills Hotel. Yeah. Somebody crashed, and it's like, really, with all the technology in that vehicle, how are you still crashing your vehicle? Did you purchase a Tesla Cybertruck?
No.
You're the Tesla guy. How do you not purchase that vehicle?
During the earnings call, when they announced the vehicle, I sat there and I looked at the vehicle being rolled out onto the stage, and my initial reaction was, this is a gag. They're just messing with us. The real vehicle is behind the curtain. It's going to come out here shortly. And then I quickly began to realize, after Franz got up on stage with the steel balls and all that, this is for real. This is really the truck. the next thing I began to ponder is there's a certain cliche that goes along with pickup trucks, right? Construction workers, large bed, towing hitches, all of that, ladder racks. And I thought to myself, how is this going to function on a construction site? In fact, we even did a video on that. We're doing these rant spoof type, George Carlin type videos. And we did one on how are you going to take a Cybertruck to a construction site? And what kind of response are you going to get, from the rednecks that are there working, right? It is definitely
because only rednecks are at construction sites. Let me tell you about all the rich guys that I would teach how to drive their Lamborghinis, their Ferraris, and their Porsches. All those rednecks.
Right.
But continue. It's funny.
Yeah, so I think it's going to take some getting used to. And, if, the celebrity status of that vehicle is going to die down. I mean, I've driven exotic cars. When I first got my Viper, for example, a lot of people were focused on it on the road and all that. And then after it wears off, people get another shiny object that they're interested in. But for now, I think the Cybertruck, is the most visible thing on the road.
Yeah, well said. It will be popular until we move on to the next thing, which might be the Roadster. But before we get into the Roadster, tell me your opinion on BYD, Build Your Dream. Can you provide any insight with that company? As we know, they surpassed Tesla at the end of 2023 in EV vehicle sales. They are nominated now for the EV Car of the Year. So can you provide some insight?
Well, it wasn't a surprise to me that they became wildly successful. We were just waiting to see which of these Chinese companies is going to take the limelight. They've got a couple of things going for them. I mean, they're in a market where you've got a growing middle class and you've got over 1 billion people. That's going to help. You've got a government that's willing to subsidize and support. And then you've got a visionary that is running the company. We just did a video on Wang Chuanfu from Anhui, China. And pretty impressive background, actually. You talk about Elon working, 80, 100 hours a week or so and not taking no for an answer. I tend to find that the kind of leadership that has that work ethic, it's very hard for them to not be successful. So it wasn't a surprise to me that BYD actually, took the lead eventually. The other thing is their price point on cars. I mean, it's all the rest of the guys in the U.S., from Lucid to Tesla, they're making the more expensive cars, and it's tough to reach that breaking or that tipping point when a EV is less expensive than an ICE vehicle. But the Chinese have been able to do that.
Do you think it's a company we're going to see in the U.S. soon, or essentially in North America? I know Elon has spoken about trying to put blockers and allowing them in.
Well, they're pretty shrewd, and they are planning on building a plant in Mexico. Now that then gives them NAFTA access, so all of this tariff stuff goes away. And finally, if there's a will, there's a way. They can create a facility here in the United States and start to import the raw materials or subassemblies and build here. So I don't see that as a huge deterrent. I think it's certainly a desire on the government's part to prevent that. Even Elon said that China could decimate the U.S. car market if they wanted without the tariffs in place.
BYD, a company we should be paying attention to.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Okay. And there are others as well. Candy, for example, they made a big splash a couple of years ago or so, and they had a car that was under $30,000. And then you have NIO. I don't know why they're still dabbling with their battery swapping stations, but in China, apparently that somewhat resonates. They have limited parking capability, and there's some other reasons for that. But at this point, NIO just happens to be at the head of the pack. But there will be others, I'm sure.
Okay, and you had a finance guru on your podcast, Mike Maloney, if I'm saying it correctly. He had referenced that Fisker would probably go bankrupt again, and now there's more news about Fisker being in trouble. Were you surprised about that news?
Not necessarily surprised. Henrik Fisker is a great designer, but it requires some additional skills to be able to run a company, keep it profitable, and even if he had those skills, it's a tough market. I mean, take a look at how Lucid is struggling, how Rivian is struggling. None of them are profitable, and so the question then becomes, what kind of backers do they have? We're not worried about Lucid because the PIF fund, is one of the wealthiest in the world, if not the. And Rivian, their benefactor with Amazon, that helps as well. But Henrik Fisker just didn't attract that kind of partnership. And it's entirely possible that at this point, someone's going to buy them out. There's enough infrastructure there that I think makes it attractive for a company that wants to be in the EV business to pick up and continue the operation with Fisker.
Okay, speaking about EV business, I want to switch to this Tesla Roadster. Do you think it's finally going to come out 2026?
My crystal ball says that there's further procrastination that's likely. And what I find interesting, though, is that the original specifications that were touted and got everyone excited actually ended up stimulating other companies to meet those kinds of performance specs. So Tesla had to keep on making it better, faster, quicker, all of that. Now I think we're down to 0 to 60 from 2 seconds, which was originally the goal, to 1 second. And I'm kind of concerned about the people driving a car that has a 0 to 60 in 1 second. You drive race cars. I mean, those are almost blackout speeds. And there, of course, it poses some risk for the drivers who aren't going to be trained on how to handle a vehicle with that much power or that much quickness. What do you think about that?
I truly feel that OEMs should be paying for their customers, whether it's a Porsche client, Ferrari, Lamborghini, any of these supercar companies, even McLaren, that they should automatically provide their customer with training at a racetrack so they understand the limitations of their car. So yeah, I mean, that's the biggest fear. You put an all new Tesla Roadster in someone's hands and they have no idea of how to handle it, right? Those kind of speeds. I think it's ignorant of the OEMs not to offer proper driver training when it comes to supercars or sports cars. So I agree with you. I think it's dangerous. And I don't care how much advanced driver assisted technology Elon puts in his cars, or anybody for that matter puts in their cars. You still need the proper training.
I fully agree with you there, Juliana. And it's it'll be interesting. Now, the other question you had was, will it really come out? To put that in perspective, there's enormous pressure on these EV manufacturers to make mainstream product. And these niche diversions are very difficult to justify, prioritize, and fund because there's so much pressure. And the latest pressure is there appears to be somewhat of a decrease in demand for EVs, or there's so much competition, there's less market share pressure. And that's one of the reasons I think that that Tesla continued to drop prices. Will it really come out within the time frame stated? The track record says that there have been a number of deadlines that have been offered, and none of them have been met.
Pete, again, thank you so much for all your knowledge, all your time. And I look forward to, hopefully, if you purchase that next Roadster, I'm going to come back down there to Phoenix and test drive it with you.
Oh, that'd be so cool. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Pete. Hey guys, thanks for taking the time to listen to this episode of Cars Without Sausage, hosted by me, Juliana, your automotive woman. If you enjoy automotive and motorsport content unfiltered, consider subscribing on YouTube or following me wherever you listen to your podcasts. Cars Without Sausage. No ego, no dickheads, just a passion for cars.